Barry was obsessed with getting that property. And before he left ABC, actually, maybe when he was still at Paramount, he worked on it. And he did. He made a deal with Herman finally. It took him 4 or 5 years. The deal was unlike any deal ever because there were phenomenal amounts of restrictions. There were restrictions in terms of what scenes you could show, what scenes you couldn't show. There were restrictions on how many commercials. There were restrictions on kinds of advertisers that would be acceptable to Winds of War. There were on number of station breaks. It was an unbelievable contract. Unbelievable contract. But we got the property with a lot of impingements connected to it.
And it was an enormously expensive project.
Yes, very, very. I can't remember, but it was like, I don't know, $70, $80 million or something. Herman also had the right to prove the writer. So we started looking for writers to write it. And we got people in. Herman wouldn't approve, And finally we got a guy, an English guy, and Herman read all this stuff, was very studious about it, and finally approved the guy. And the guy got in about a month later, had a heart attack and died. So there we were again. So now we're 2 years in, and we haven't got anybody, and we don't know what we're going to do. So Dan said, I got an idea. Herman should write the scripts. I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, here's what we'll do. Herman will write the scripts. He'll approve himself as writer. We can pretty sure of that. And we might get this project off the ground. And he said, and I'll back him up. Earl Wallace and I will be in the back room. And so what happened was, and I said, well, Dan, what's going to happen when the script comes in and Herman goes to see the film, and it turns out it's not his script that he wrote. And he said, Brandon, it'll be 5 years later. He'll never remember it. Who cares? So don't worry about it. So we did that. That was our formula. And Herman would write these scripts, which were not terrible scripts, but historically wonderful, but emotionally a little flat. And Dan and Earl would rewrite them and put in some story in the narrative and the characterizations, et cetera, and make them come alive. And that's how we developed our scripts. And the casting was a difficult area. We had a dinner with Herman and Gary Nardino, who was president of Paramount at the time, myself and Dan Curtis, and as I mentioned Sarah Walk as well as Herman. And we were talking about casting. It was a celebration dinner. We got the rights. It's going to be a wonderful miniseries, most exciting, blah, blah, blah. And it gets around to later in the meal about casting, and I said about Pug and who we're going to have for Pug. I said, I got an idea. I said, how about because we're all having a little wine, who cares? How about Paul Newman to play Pug, and Joanne can play Rhoda. And if we get both of them, because they're really, then they're away a lot, they'll be together, and that might work. What do you think about that? And Sarah Walk turns and looks at me. She says, Paul Newman's not right as Pug. And I went, oh my God, this is going to be the longest 5 years of my life. I kind of think it's going to take forever. Paul Newman just got turned down as Pug. If we could get Paul Newman to play Pug, we'd fall to our knees. And so, with deep breath, and anyway. It finally got, there are not many people who can play Pug. Pug is a very difficult role to play, and Mitchum's name came up. And I was worried about age for Mitchum. I mean, I knew he could play it, but I was worried about his age because Bob had been around a while. And so I said, listen, I want to meet with Mitchum and kind of check him out a little bit, before we say okay to Mitchum. And Curtis said, well, all right, okay. So Mitchum comes down, and we have a lunch at Jimmy's. And I said, well, can we lunch outside so I can really check the wrinkles and all the neck and all that. And we come to this lunch, and as Mitchum starts to walk outside, he puts on the biggest pair of dark glasses I have ever seen in my life. They cover his entire face, and I can see nothing. And I'm going the entire lunch kind of like this, looking up. Yeah, right, Bob. And so he completely outfoxed me on that one. He knew exactly what was going to happen in that interview, and we went ahead with Bob Mitchum, and he was wonderful. too old, but wonderful. The idea, the concept of the casting on Winds of War was a little different than anything we had done before. We really wanted to make it as theatrical as we could. Make it look like not a television miniseries, but a big theatrical movie. And so we went after Jen Michael Vincent, who was a movie star, Ali McGraw was a movie star, and populated with as many movie people as we could, just to give it a little bit more of a panache than it would have had if it were a north and south or whatever. And I think to a degree that worked. This is when the promotion and publicity routine that we had, strategy that really went into high gear. We ended up with, for the Winds of War, when it went on the air, with 17 covers on that day that it came out. It was unheard of, unprecedented. We had covers for, Oak Farm Daily. It didn't make any difference what it was. We had covers on it. It was, the publicity and the promotion on the thing was unbelievable. We had a little difficulty with getting the film from Paramount because Paramount was insisting that it's a Paramount Pictures Presents. And we had been against that policy at ABC for years and years of anything over the title, either producer or studio. And what was interesting about it was that policy was instigated by Barry Diller, who is now at Paramount, insisting that his company go over our title. So that was a little war going on with Paramount, like they weren't going to deliver the film, and there was something, we were going on the air, and this went down to about 2 days before air. One of those little happy little things to keep you awake at night, and we finally got it resolved. But those little problems.